Killing 6-year-old Casey Williamson in 2002 was executed by lethal injection tonight.
Today is the 21st anniversary of a little girl's disappearance and death.
Johnson kidnapped 6-year-old Casey Williamson, who would have turned 28 this November.
The state was slated to execute Johnson next Tuesday. News 4 is working to learn what's next for him as he remains on death.
And
I'm so sorry for hurting your child.
Was you there? Why do you speak because it's the truth?
That the Department of Corrections placed two-time convicted killer Scott Dozier on suicide watch.
Coble refused to enter the courtroom for his sentencing hearing this morning.
To his family, his son Gordon lost control once his father closed his eyes for the last time.
Death row for almost 3 decades for killing his estranged wife's parents and her brother back in the 1980s.
Their pasts are varied, but at one time or another, they all have a common thought about their future: death by electrocution.
while we grieve the amazing lives that were lost too soon, we find joy in the blessings and love we have in our family.
Several members of the victim's family were in court today, and as the execution date came down, there were hugs and tears.
Gordon Coble kind of approached the glass, put his hands on the bars of the glass, and then eventually ended up
putting down a Missouri man. In the quiet town of Bonne Terre, Missouri, the eerie silence of the state prison was shattered on a somber evening as Johnny Johnson met his fate. On this particular night, the putting down chamber was illuminated, casting a pale glow on the man strapped to the gurney. Johnny Johnson, aged 45, became the center of a heated debate, one that questioned the role of mental health in the criminal justice system. The recent putting down of Johnny Johnson sent shockwaves through the nation, reigniting a long-standing debate about the fairness and ethics of the ending penalty. Johnson's case had been anything but ordinary. As he lay there, moments away from the lethal injection, the concerns raised about his mental health seemed to hang heavily in the room. Johnson had been diagnosed with schizophrenia, a severe mental illness which had led his defense team to argue vehemently against his putting down. The crux of their argument was that individuals grappling with profound mental health issues should not be subjected to the ultimate punishment, demise.
Killing 6-year-old Casey Williamson in 2002 was executed by lethal injection tonight.
And my father drank himself to death.
Johnny Johnson's crime was one of the most horrific murders that has come across my desk.
It was more than either one of them could process, seeing Casey's little body in the...
11 people were here for Casey to witness Johnson's execution.
And we lost her at 23 years old.
The debate over whether individuals like Johnny Johnson should face the ending penalty had raged on for years. On one side, proponents of the ending penalty argued that justice demanded the ultimate retribution for heinous crimes regardless of the perpetrator's mental health status. On the other side, advocates for mental health and human rights contended that executing someone with a severe mental illness was a grave injustice. Johnson's case seemed to epitomize the complexity of the issue. His struggles with schizophrenia were well documented, with medical professionals affirming the severity of his condition. In his final statement, released just hours before the putting down, he expressed remorse and offered a brief apology. "God bless, sorry to the people and family I hurt." It was a stark reminder that beneath the heinous crime that he committed, there was a man whose mental state had been a subject of concern. As the lethal injection began, Justice Sonia Sotomayor and 2 other justices had dissented in the U.S. Supreme Court's decision not to stay the putting down. They voiced the same concerns that had resonated throughout Johnson's legal battles: the putting down of a man with documented mental illness before a comprehensive assessment of his competency to be executed had taken place. In the aftermath of Johnny Johnson's putting down, the questions persisted. Had justice been served, or had a man's severe mental illness been overlooked in the pursuit of retribution? His case became a catalyst for a broader conversation about the intersection of mental health and the ending penalty, leaving society to grapple with the enduring dilemma. How should the justice system navigate the complexities of mental illness in cases involving capital punishment? The tragic case of Casey Williamson. Casey's disappearance on that summer morning of July 26th of 2002 triggered an unprecedented sense of dread and urgency in Valley Park. The close-knit community rallied together and an intense search effort was launched, with volunteers, law enforcement, and concerned neighbors scouring every corner of the town. But the hours turned into days, and as the sun set and rose again, hope began to wane. Casey's family, once inseparable from the community, now found themselves at the epicenter of a tragedy that no one could comprehend. The anguish they felt was a reflection of the collective grief that had gripped Valley Park. Children who had once roamed freely now clung to their parents with fear etched into their innocent eyes. The town that had known mostly peace and harmony was now shaken to its core. In the midst of this devastating uncertainty, the resolve of the community remained unbroken. They held vigils, organized search parties, and leaned on each other for support. Strangers became friends as they united in a shared purpose to bring Casey home safe and sound. But the unfolding nightmare took an unimaginable turn when Casey's lifeless body was discovered. Buried beneath rocks and debris in a nearby pit, her final resting place was a stark contrast to the carefree life she should have known. The weight of sorrow that descended upon Valley Park was immeasurable. As news of Casey's tragic fate spread, the shock and grief rippled far beyond the town's borders. Her story touched the hearts of countless individuals who had never met her but were forever impacted by her short life and the horrifying manner of her demise. Parents across the nation held their own children a little tighter, knowing that the unthinkable could happen to anyone. The case of Casey Williamson would forever be etched in the annals of Valley Park's history. It became a somber reminder of the vulnerability of innocence and the fragility of safety. The tight-knit community, once known for its harmony, was now united by a shared grief that transcended words. The memory of Casey served as a lasting tribute to the need for vigilance, compassion, and the protection of those who couldn't protect themselves. Legal battles. The legal battles surrounding Johnny Johnson's putting down were marked by a series of challenges and appeals made by his defense team, all aimed at halting the implementation of his ending sentence. Johnson's case was fraught with complexities, primarily revolving around his mental health and competency for putting down. The Missouri Supreme Court became a focal point for these legal proceedings. Johnson's defense team raised compelling arguments regarding his severe schizophrenia and how it affected his understanding of the connection between his crime and the punishment. They contended that executing someone with such a profound mental illness would be a grave injustice. In June, the Missouri Supreme Court denied an appeal seeking to block Johnson's putting down, emphasizing that his schizophrenia didn't prevent him from comprehending the link between his crime and the impending punishment. This decision was pivotal in the legal battle leading up to the putting down. However, Johnson's legal team was not deterred. They took their case to the Federal Appeals Court, seeking a halt to the putting down. A 3-judge federal appeals court panel temporarily halted the putting down plans, recognizing the gravity of mental health issues at play. But the full 8th U.S. Court of Appeals later reinstated the putting down, a decision that further escalated the legal battle. Johnson's attorney swiftly filed appeals to the U.S. Supreme Court with a central focus on his competency to be executed. The U.S. Supreme Court played a crucial role in determining the fate of Johnny Johnson. The highest court in the land received multiple appeals from Johnson's defense team, all centered around the question of whether a severe mental illness should preclude him from facing the ultimate punishment. In the end, the U.S. Supreme Court rejected a late request to stay the putting down, with only Justice Sonia Sotomayor and 2 other justices dissenting. Sotomayor, in her dissent, raised concerns about executing a man with documented mental illness before a thorough investigation of his competency had taken place. She argued that there was no moral victory in executing someone who believed he was being used by Satan to bring about the end of the world. The legal battle surrounding Johnny Johnson's putting down, marked by appeals and differing court decisions, highlighted the complex and contentious nature of the intersection between severe mental illness and the ending penalty in the U.S. justice system. The decisions made by various courts, ultimately leading to Johnson's putting down, remain a subject of debate and reflection within the legal community and society at large.
4 hours ago, Johnny Johnson died by lethal injection for the murder of 6-year-old Casey Williamson. A Missouri man convicted of killing a 6-year-old girl back in 2005 is set to be executed tonight at 6.
A competency hearing to determine Johnny's current condition and his competency to be executed.
Several family members of Casey Williamson came to the state prison to see the man convicted of murdering her.
Halted the execution of Johnny Johnson, saying it may constitute cruel and unusual punishment.
Remembering Casey Williamson's story. The tragic story of Casey Williamson had a profound impact on her tight-knit community in Valley Park, Missouri. Her abduction and brutal slaying in 2002 sent shockwaves throughout the town, forever altering the lives of its residents and prompting a collective response of grief, solidarity, and remembrance. The effect of Casey's story on the community was profound. Valley Park, known for its serene and harmonious existence, was suddenly thrust into the national spotlight due to the horrific nature of the crime. The sense of safety that had categorized the town was shattered, and a palpable unease settled in. Parents clung tighter to their children, and the idea that such a tragedy could occur in their midst weighed heavily on the collective consciousness. In the wake of Casey's tragic demise, the community rallied together to remember and honor her memory. They refused to let her story be forgotten, and her legacy became a driving force for change and reflection. Several initiatives and efforts emerged in the aftermath of her passing. One such initiative involved providing scholarships and savings bonds to students in her honor.
New today, the man convicted of murdering a 6-year-old girl will be put to death on August the 1st.
We're the ones to identify Casey's body when it happened.
Johnny Johnson's going to be put to death on Tuesday after his stay of execution was lifted today. Johnson's stay was put in place.
Johnson kidnapped 6-year-old Casey Williamson, who would have turned 28 this November.
The Missouri Attorney General's office has now filed a petition to get the stay of execution overturned.
Casey's story also served as a catalyst for discussions about child safety and abduction prevention. It prompted parents to have open conversations with their children about safety and vigilance. Perhaps most importantly, Casey's story brought the community closer together. It united Valley Park residents in their determination to remember Casey and prevent such a heart-wrenching event from happening again. The tragedy, while undeniably devastating, highlighted the strength and resilience of a community that refused to let darkness define its future. Johnny Johnson's struggle. Johnny Johnson's struggle with schizophrenia cast a shadow over his entire criminal case, raising profound questions about the intersection of mental health and the criminal justice system. His diagnosis of severe schizophrenia became a central issue that underscored the complexities and ethical dilemmas faced by the legal system. From the outset, it was evident that Johnny Johnson's mental health played a pivotal role in his actions and the subsequent legal proceedings. His severe schizophrenia, a debilitating mental illness marked by delusions, hallucinations, and impaired cognitive functioning, was a stark factor in the tragedy that unfolded. Throughout his legal battle, Johnson's defense team argued vehemently that his diagnosis of schizophrenia should be a compelling factor in his case. They contend that his mental illness rendered him unable to fully comprehend the gravity of his actions, the consequences of his crimes, and the rationale behind his putting down. The case prompted a critical examination of the ethical and moral implications of executing individuals with severe mental illness. Advocates and legal experts questioned whether it was justifiable to impose the ultimate punishment on individuals whose mental faculties were compromised to such an extent. It brought to the forefront the broader debate surrounding the ending penalty and the extent to which mental health should factor into such decisions. One of the key legal battles revolved around Johnson's competency to be executed. The Missouri Supreme Court and Federal Appeals Court grappled with the question of whether his severe schizophrenia should preclude him from facing the ultimate penalty. The legal proceedings shed light on the complexities of assessing an individual's mental state, especially when severe mental illness is involved. Ultimately, the U.S. Supreme Court's decision to reject a late request to stay Johnson's putting down left many pondering the implications of executing a man with documented mental illness. Justice Sonia Sotomayor and others expressed their concerns, highlighting the need for a meaningful investigation into competency before carrying out such sentences. Appeals and clemency. Johnny Johnson's legal journey was marked by a series of appeals, efforts to secure clemency, and a pivotal role played by the U.S. Supreme Court. These legal proceedings were instrumental in shaping the fate of his putting down. In a last-ditch effort to spare Johnny Johnson's life, his attorney sought clemency from the governor of Missouri, Mike Parson. The clemency petition was accompanied by arguments highlighting Johnson's mental illness and the opposition to the ending penalty expressed by Casey Williamson's father, Ernie Williamson. Despite the appeals, the Missouri Supreme Court denied an appeal that sought to block Johnson's putting down. The court emphasized that his schizophrenia didn't prevent him from comprehending the link between his crime and the impending punishment. This decision was a significant setback for Johnson's defense. Johnson's legal team also turned to the federal appeals court in their bid to halt the putting down. A 3-judge federal appeals court panel initially granted a temporary halt to the putting down, recognizing the gravity of the mental health issues at play. However, the full 8th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals later reinstated the putting down, intensifying the legal battle. The U.S. Supreme Court played a pivotal role in the final decision regarding Johnny Johnson's putting down. In a closely watched development, the Supreme Court rejected a late request to stay the putting down, with only Justice Sonia Sotomayor and 2 other justices dissenting. Sotomayor expressed concerns about executing a man with documented mental illness before a thorough investigation of his competency had taken place. Ultimately, the Supreme Court's decision cleared the way for Johnny Johnson's putting down to proceed. This decision marked a critical juncture in the legal battle surrounding his case and raised broader questions about the treatment of individuals with severe mental illness within the criminal justice system. Johnny Johnson's case underscored the complexities and ethical dilemmas surrounding mental health in the context of the ending penalty. The appeals, clemency efforts, and the final Supreme Court decision highlighted the profound impact of mental illness on the legal process and served as a focal point for discussions about justice, mental health, and the ultimate punishment. Balancing justice and mental health concerns. The intersection of justice and mental health concerns in ending penalty cases is a complex and contentious issue that raises significant ethical and legal challenges. The case of Johnny Johnson and others like him bring to the forefront the delicate balance that must be struck between administering justice and addressing the mental health needs of individuals with severe mental illness facing the ultimate punishment. One of the central ethical challenges revolves around the putting down of individuals with severe mental illness. While the legal system is designed to hold individuals accountable for their actions, it must also consider the capacity of the accused to understand the consequences of their crimes. Severe mental illnesses like schizophrenia can severely impair one's ability to comprehend the gravity of their actions and the implications of the ending penalty. This raises questions about the fairness and humanity of executing individuals who may lack a full understanding of the punishment that they're facing. Moreover, executing individuals with severe mental illness raises broader questions about the purpose and effectiveness of the ending penalty itself.
Today is the 21st anniversary of a little girl's disappearance and death.
It is egregious to execute someone who does not understand the reason for their execution. He should be kept.
Her killer, Johnny Johnson, was set to be executed next week for her murder.
Being zombie for 10 years, just barely doing the best I could just to get out of bed and breathe.
Brutally murdered her at an abandoned factory.
The ending penalty is intended to serve as a deterrent and retribution for heinous crimes, but its application to individuals with compromised mental health can be seen as a flawed and punitive approach. It prompts discussions about whether such individuals should be subjected to life imprisonment instead, which would ensure public safety while also addressing their mental health needs. The broader debate about the ending penalty's role in cases involving severe mental illness encompasses considerations of human rights, mental health treatment, and societal values. It challenges society to grapple with the complexities of mental illness within the context of criminal justice. Advocates argue for a more compassionate and rehabilitative approach, emphasizing the need for comprehensive mental health evaluations and treatment for individuals facing the ending penalty. Ultimately, the case of Johnny Johnson and others like him serves as a poignant reminder that the justice system must navigate a delicate balance between enforcing the law and acknowledging the profound impact of severe mental illness. It prompts ongoing discussions about the role of the ending penalty in addressing the complex and nuanced issue of mental health within the criminal justice system, pushing for more thoughtful and humane approaches to justice. Casey Williamson's family coping with grief and advocacy. The tragic loss of Casey Williamson in 2002 left an indelible mark on her family, who were faced with the unimaginable pain of losing a beloved child. Coping with such a profound loss was an arduous journey, but Casey's family turned their grief into a catalyst for advocacy and positive change. For Casey's family, the initial shock and grief were overwhelming. Her abduction and brutal slaying shattered their world, leaving them grappling with emotions of anger, sorrow, and disbelief. The realization that their precious child had been taken from them in such a horrific manner was a burden that no family should have to bear. Amidst their grief, Casey's family found the strength to transform their pain into a powerful force for good. They refused to let her memory fade into obscurity and sought ways to honor her legacy. One of their initiatives involved providing scholarships and savings bonds to students in her honor, ensuring that her memory lived on through the educational pursuits of others. The family also organized community safety fairs in Casey's memory. These events became platforms for educating parents and children about various safety aspects, including fire safety, water safety, and bicycle safety. By distributing child identification kits and sharing safety tips, they aim to protect other children from potential harm. Casey's family played a pivotal role in advocating for child safety and prevention efforts. They used their own grief as a driving force to ensure that no other family would experience the heartache they had endured. Their advocacy work extended beyond their personal healing and became a means to honor Casey's memory by positively impacting the lives of others. Throughout their journey, Casey's family demonstrated immense resilience and courage in the face of unimaginable tragedy. They turned their grief into a powerful force for good, using their pain to protect other children and create a lasting legacy for Casey. Their story proves the enduring strength of families who, in the midst of their own suffering, seek to make the world a better and safer place in honor of their loved ones. The ending penalty in the United States, recent development. The ending penalty in the United States has been a subject of ongoing debate and scrutiny, with recent developments shedding light on its status, trends, and statistics. Understanding the broader context of capital punishment is essential when examining cases like Johnny Johnson's. In recent years, there's been a discernible decline in the use of ending penalty in the United States. Several factors have contributed to this shift, including concerns about the fairness of the legal process, the possibility of wrongful convictions, and evolving public opinion. Many states have reconsidered their stance on the ending penalty, with some even abolishing it altogether. The decline in putting down and ending sentences reflects a growing awareness of the complexities and ethical challenges associated with capital punishment. Advocacy groups, legal experts, and the public have raised questions about the effectiveness of the ending penalty as a deterrent, its disproportionate impact on minority communities, and the cost of lengthy legal proceedings. In this evolving landscape, Johnny Johnson's case takes its place as a poignant example of the ongoing debate surrounding the ending penalty. His diagnosis of severe schizophrenia and the legal battles over his competency underscore the complexities of administering the ultimate punishment, especially in cases involving individuals with compromised mental health. The Supreme Court's role in Johnny Johnson's case also reflects the broader context of capital punishment in the United States.
The state was slated to execute Johnson next Tuesday. News 4 is working to learn what's next for him as he remains on death.
Feel like it's been 21 years?
No. Sometimes it feels like it's been forever.
I sat down with 6-year-old Casey Williamson's mom, whom I've interviewed several times over the last 2 decades.
That could prevent further atrocities from happening and help Johnny to cope with his schizophrenia.
6-year-old Valley Park girl 21 years ago today will not be executed August 1st.
The court's decisions have a far-reaching impact on the application of the ending penalty, setting legal precedents and shaping the course of individual cases. While the ending penalty remains a contentious issue with varying perspectives on its morality and efficacy, recent developments suggest a shift away from its widespread use. Johnny Johnson's case is a poignant reminder of the challenges and ethical dilemmas associated with capital punishment in a changing legal landscape. As debates surrounding the ending penalty continue, cases like Johnny Johnson's serve as important touchpoints in the ongoing national conversation about the role of capital punishment in the United States and its place in a justice system grappling with complex moral and legal questions. Community initiatives and safety efforts. In the wake of the tragic loss of 6-year-old Casey Williamson, the Valley Park community responded with a heartfelt commitment to honoring her memory and ensuring that her legacy would be one of promoting child safety and raising awareness about the importance of vigilance, educational scholarships, and savings bonds. In a touching tribute to Casey, her family established educational scholarships and savings bonds in her name. This initiative wasn't just a means of keeping her memory alive, but also a way to invest in the future of other young students, allowing her legacy to continue through the educational pursuits of others. Community safety fairs. Casey's family organized a series of community safety fairs, turning their grief into a catalyst for change. These events served as vital platforms for educating both parents and children on various aspects of safety. Topics included fire safety, water safety, bicycle safety, and general child safety. Attendees received child identification kits, ensuring that parents had the necessary tools to protect their children. Child safety advocacy. Beyond the safety fairs, Casey's family channeled their grief into ongoing child safety advocacy. They became vocal proponents of child safety measures within their community, advocating for policies and practices that would protect children from potential harm. Their advocacy efforts extended to areas such as improved supervision, safety protocols, and neighborhood watch programs. Memorializing Casey. In addition to these tangible efforts, the community came together to memorialize Casey in a lasting way. Parks, memorials, and plaques were dedicated in her honor, serving as constant reminders of the importance of child safety and the enduring impact of her life. Impact on local schools. Casey's story also left a profound impact on local schools. Teachers and administrators incorporated child safety discussions into their curricula, ensuring that students were educated about safety measures. The tragedy spurred discussions about creating safe environments for learning.
Frederick Michael Baer. Frederick Michael Baer, a 41-year-old inmate at Indiana State Prison, has made a difficult and remorseful decision during his time on End Row. Despite being incarcerated for more than 8 years and facing the possibility of another 8 years of legal challenges, Baer has written a letter to his lawyers asking them to end his end penalty appeals and allow him to face the consequences of his heinous actions and be put down for good. Besides, he said, he deserves to be put down for the attempted physical hurt and knife slaughter of 26-year-old Corey Clark and her 4-year-old daughter on February 25, 2004, inside their home near the tiny town of LaPel in central Indiana. I think about it every day, sobbed Baer during a recent prison interview with the Anderson, Indiana Herald Bulletin, adding that, "I'm so sorry, so sorry." Still, he hasn't mustered sufficient courage to send the letter terminating his appeals, even though he said he doesn't fear his demise. Baer said he has the paperwork ready to be dropped in the mail any day and that he lives day by day. At this point, as per Baer, putting down or breathing his last is just a transition for him. His lead lawyer during his trial, Jeffrey Lockwood, said End Row inmates go through a roller coaster of emotions, but defense attorneys advise against cutting short the appeals process. Lockwood, who is now a prosecutor, said that life shouldn't be considered cheap, no matter who it is. That's what he believes, and he thinks that's how most people feel.
So sorry for hurting your child. I don't expect them to forgive me. I don't expect them to understand because I don't understand.
He added that there are lots of ups and downs and emotions with the victim's family as well as their own family, and that the entire process is very emotional for everybody. Baer is confined to a small cell in a tall brick building on the prison grounds, surrounded by barbed wire and guard towers. The prison holds 2,000 of Indiana's most heinous criminals, including 10 other End Row inmates. State officials estimate it costs $1 million in trial and appeal costs for a capital punishment convict. In the past 25 years, 94 criminal defendants have been sentenced to end in Indiana. 20 have been executed. 54 cases were reversed by the state or the courts. It has been 4 years since the last person was put down to his demise. Baer spoke softly, emotionally during his prison interview. Shackles and chains restrained him from ankles to wrists. Long pauses and deep breaths interrupted his comments. He choked back tears and turned away from the camera in shame and regret when talking about the slayings that put him on end row. Baer said he was working at a construction site in Anderson, Indiana, on the afternoon of the incident. He said he was suffering withdrawal from methamphetamine. Anxiety hammered in his head. Sweat seeped from his skin despite the February chill. With evil intent, he said he left work early to drive someplace, any place to rob, any woman to take advantage of. He drove to Lapel and parked near 2 homes. He approached one house and knocked on the door. A woman answered but cautiously kept Baer from looking inside. He asked to use her phone. He recalled that she brought him the phone, but he was trying to get in, so he dialed something and gave her the phone back. After that, down the road, he spotted a woman moving boxes outside. It was Corey Clark, wife of John Clark and mother of Jenna and Morgan. Her husband was in Florida looking for a job, and her older daughter Morgan was at school. Baer knocked on Clark's door. In his own words, he said a little girl answered the door and she went to get her mother, as Baer asked if he could use the phone. Corey Clark went to get her phone without noticing Baer was following her inside. She turned around and started to scream. Baer told her not to scream, and then everything fell apart from there. Baer said between long pauses that he tried to physically take advantage of her, and then he slaughtered her by cutting her throat. Baer won't talk about the slaughter of the 4-year-old daughter. Investigators believe she ran from the room in terror, followed by Baer, who then restrained and took her life with the knife. In the interview, Baer said through tears that they didn't deserve to be put down. He added that he really doesn't know what got into him and why he did it. He added that he's thought about the whole incident every day for the past 8 years, and about all the pain he has caused and all the hurt he has caused. He recalled remembering the words of Corey Clark's mother on the witness stand asking why, and said that he's asked himself the same question every single day for the past 8 years. Baer's double slaying conviction was not his first encounter with the crime. In 1983, his sister was slayed by her ex-husband, tragically culminating a turbulent and abusive relationship. Baer said her demise was a turning point, causing him to turn to drugs and to stealing to support his addiction. By his late 20s, he was continually in and out of jail. Law enforcement officials said he eventually became a serial physically hurter, using the ruse of needing to use a telephone to talk his way into women's homes. After his arrest in the Corey Clark case, investigators found trophy items taken from the homes of his victims. Madison County prosecutor Rodney Cummings, who tried the Baer case, said if there's one person in Indiana who should be put to end, it's Baer. Baer doesn't disagree. He said that so many people's lives have been destroyed because of what he had done, and all he can do is hope one day the family might forgive him, if that's even possible at all. He added that he doesn't expect them to understand because he himself doesn't really understand. There's no reason for a person to do that to another person. Number 3. Billy Wayne Coble. In the decades after he was sentenced to be put down for a triple slaughter, Billy Wayne Coble had plenty of time to consider how his final moment alive may play out. There was a run of appeals to commute Coble's end sentence following the 1989 slaying of his estranged wife's parents and her brother, a Texas police officer. And there was a last-minute plea to the U.S. Supreme Court to stay his Thursday execution. It was denied that same day, and prison staff in Huntsville readied a slate of lethal injection drugs to put down the 70-year-old. Coble left a long, baffling trail of wreckage over the slayings and the kidnapping of his estranged wife, Karen Vischa, whose 3 daughters and nephew he tied up in their home before the abduction. On Thursday evening, he was asked if he wanted to provide any last words. The Associated Press reported. He did. "That'll be $5, Coble said, a possible reference to his nickname $5 Bill. He told gathered family that he loved them. "That'll be $5, he repeated and nodded, adding, "Take care." He began to gasp and snore. The cryptic words still hung in the air when chaos overtook the chamber observation room. Coble's son Gordon pounded on the observation glass window, cursing and shouting, "No," the Houston Chronicle reported, and soon after, his son Dalton joined in the fray, along with a woman the AP described as a daughter-in-law. The three were yelling obscenities, throwing fists, and kicking at others before they were moved to a courtyard and handcuffed by police. "Why are you doing this?" the woman asked police. "They just took the life of his daddy." As the scuffle continued outside the chamber, a single dose of pentobarbital hit Coble's bloodstream, the AP reported. He was pronounced gone 11 minutes later at 6:24 p.m., becoming the oldest prisoner Texas has executed since it resumed the end penalty in 1982. Gordon and Dalton Coble were charged with disorderly conduct and resisting arrest. The fracas was an exclamation point at the end of a 30-year legal odyssey for a man who one former prosecutor said had a heart full of scorpions. Coble, distraught over a coming divorce, kidnapped his estranged wife before he was arrested and freed on bond. But 9 days later, he arrived at Vischa's home, where he handcuffed and tied up her 3 daughters and nephew, J.R. Vischa. Then Coble drove to the Axtell, Texas home of her parents, Robert Vischa, 64, and Zelda Vischa, 60. He fatally shot them, along with their son Bobby Vischa, 39, at his home near his parents. He returned to Karen Vischa's home to wait for her return. Upon her arrival, he directly told Karen that he had taken the life of her mama and her daddy and her brother, adding that since they are all gone for good, now nobody was going to come help her. He allowed her to kiss her children goodbye before he kidnapped her again, drove her to a deserted field, and threatened to physically take advantage of her. The commotion got the attention of a sheriff, who followed in a patrol car. Coble knifed Vischa in the chin and face as he drove and crashed into a parked car in an effort to take his own life to avoid prison. He was arrested at the scene and given capital punishment by a jury decision in a McLennan County court the next year. In 2007, an appeals court ordered a new trial on his punishment, but a second jury convened and handed down an end sentence the following year. Crawford Long, a former first assistant district attorney in McLennan County who helped in the second trial, described Coble as a man with a heart full of scorpions. Coble's attorneys criticized the outcome of the second trial, citing the state's reliance on a witness who said Coble posed a threat despite good behavior while on end row. Earlier in 2019, they pleaded with the state to take him off end row because of his age, saying that he is now 70 years old, in poor health, and has an almost blemish-free prison record for the past 30 years, and that his execution would serve no valid purpose.
Is here on death row. It was for an act of extreme violence.
Was you there? Why do you speak against it? It's the truth.
Some family members of the victims disagreed with that notion. J.R. Vischa was 11 when he was tied up and threatened by Coble alongside his cousins. He told the AP the execution brought a sense of relief. Vischa said that still, the way they do it is more humane than what he did to his family. It's not what he deserves, but it will be good to know we got as much justice as allowed by the law. Vischa later became a prosecutor, inspired by his police officer father, whose life was taken by Coble. He operates a private law practice now and has worked to get a stretch of highway near Waco renamed after his father. Number 2, Scott Dozier. Anticipating his end by lethal injection last summer, Scott Dozier said he didn't expect the end of his life to have any higher significance. He told that he doesn't have any grand expectations and said, "I think it's just done. I think it's just black." Besides, the convicted double slayer said the alternative was hardly so meaningful. Life in prison isn't a life, he said. He urged the state to go ahead. "If people say they're going to take my life, get to it." Dozier, 48, was found expired at Ely State Prison, not in the new $860,000 execution chamber where he had once been scheduled to put down, but rather in his cell. Correctional officers in Ely, Nevada found him hanging from a bedsheet tied to an air vent. His end by apparent self-harm came 6 months after his planned execution was delayed for a second time. The discovery of his body marked a grim new chapter in a years-long battle over his execution, which has been intensified by the objections of drug companies that oppose the use of their products for capital punishment. The end of Dozier's life is unlikely to mark the end of this dispute. More than 7% of lethal injections nationally have been botched, according to Austin Serrett, a professor at Amherst College and the author of Gruesome Spectacles, Botched Executions and America's Death Penalty. In November, a Tennessee inmate chose to end his life in an electric chair rather than consume a fatal cocktail of drugs, which opponents of the capital punishment saw as a stark illustration of the brutality of lethal injection. When the U.S. Supreme Court declined to review the case, Justice Sonia Sotomayor dissented and called on the High Court to consider whether methods of execution violated the prohibition on cruel and unusual punishment inscribed in the Eighth Amendment. Dozier was alone at the time of his demise, the state said. When emergency medical care failed to revive him, he was pronounced gone at 4:35 p.m. Pacific Time. In federal court filings from late last year, federal public defenders representing Dozier had protested that the conditions of his confinement, including his isolation because of apparent self-harming inclinations, violated his constitutional rights. Prison officials have repeatedly denied that Dozier was mistreated and issued a stock response to his demise, pledging that the Nevada Department of Corrections is committed to building a safer community by striving to incorporate progressive best practices in all aspects of corrections. Dozier's attorney, Thomas Erickson, couldn't be reached the next day. One of his former attorneys, Clark Patrick, told the Review-Journal that he was shocked, having last spoken with Dozier earlier that week. When they discussed plans for a visit January 14, Patrick said he maintained friendly relations with all of his former clients, but that Dozier was the only one he would consider a friend. Dozier was committed to the Nevada prison in 2007 after a Clark County jury convicted him of first-degree slaughter in the demise of 22-year-old Jeremiah Miller, whose body he had sawed into pieces and placed in a suitcase. He'd also been convicted of second-degree slaughter in a separate case in Arizona in 2005. Both involved the trade of methamphetamine. Dozier waived his right to future appeals in 2016, saying he was prepared to be put down. And then he waited and waited. The poison prepared for Dozier last summer was a never-before-used 3-drug mix of midazolam, a common sedative, the painkiller fentanyl, and a muscle-paralyzing agent called cisatracurium. But the execution, which would have been Nevada's first in more than a decade, was postponed after Alvogen, a New Jersey-based maker of midazolam, filed a complaint alleging that the state of Nevada had acquired the drug by subterfuge with the undisclosed and improper intent to use it for the upcoming execution. In response, the state said the tactic was part of a guerrilla war against the capital punishment, adopting language used by Justice Samuel A. Alito Jr. in oral arguments in the 2015 Glossop v. Gross case, in which the U.S. Supreme Court upheld the use of the sedative midazolam. Nevada found support from 15 other states, from Utah to Florida, which banded together to file a brief backing plans to put Dozier to his end. 30 states use some form of capital punishment.
If Jeremiah Miller's family really thinks I killed him, they should have the opportunity to kill me.
Reported that the Department of Corrections placed 2-time convicted killer Scott Dozier on suicide watch.
Makers of fentanyl and cisatracurium soon joined the lawsuit against Nevada, though U.S. District Judge Elizabeth Gonzalez found in September that only Alvogen had demonstrated that the state had acted in bad faith. In a preliminary injunction, which again halted the execution, she cited a letter in which the company had informed states that it strongly objects to the use of its products in capital punishment. The judge warned of reputational harm because of anti-end penalty sentiments within the medical community. Dozier's execution was first delayed in the fall of 2017, when a different judge objected to the use of cisatracurium based on the testimony of an anesthesiologist, who warned that the paralysis it induced could hide signs that the other 2 drugs then in the mix, diazepam and fentanyl, were failing. The defense's expert witness said the condemned prisoner might be able to feel himself suffocating. The state Supreme Court later overturned the judge's decision. The legal dispute was ongoing at the time of Dozier's demise. The state warned in a filing in the closing days of 2018 that the objections of private drug companies could effectively neutralize the death penalty. The state's new Attorney General, Democrat Aaron Ford, opposes the end penalty, but declined to tell the Review-Journal whether he would drop the appeals pursued by Adam Laxalt, the former Attorney General and unsuccessful Republican candidate for governor. Dozier was put on self-harm watch several times during the wrangling over his execution, though he denied in December attempting to take his own life. "The state's responsibility is to execute me," he told, adding, "I've been ready to go for 2 years now." His lawyers said in filings in U.S. District Court in Reno, Nevada, that the isolation imposed on Dozier in October had caused him to suffer physically and mentally. Medical and mental health records, however, do not document or demonstrate a mental health justification for such confinement, they argued. In its response, the state said Dozier had repeatedly promised to take matters into his own hands and end his own life if the state is unable to carry out the execution in a timely manner. His sister had aimed to provide him with an anatomy textbook with information about cutting the jugular vein, according to the state's filing, and Dozier had sought razor blades as well as smuggled drugs. State correctional policies on disciplinary segregation indicate that an inmate deemed prone to harming himself by a healthcare professional will be placed on watch. Taking of one's own life has long been a leading cause of demise in American jails, where the rate is 4 times that of the general population. In July 2015 alone, 6 black women passed away by taking their own lives in U.S. jails. According to Gerald Landsberg, a former professor at New York University's Silver School of Social Work. On average, one person takes his own life every 13 hours in Nevada, according to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, which also includes resources for those who need support. Number 1. John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy was a serial slaughterer and physical harmer who slaughtered at least 33 teenage boys and young men in Cook County, Illinois, burying most under his house. Sometimes known as the Killer Clown for his habit of dressing in a clown costume and makeup, Gacy had a disturbed childhood and struggled with his homosexuality. Gacy committed all the slayings in his Norwood Park home, luring his victims there with the promise of construction work or some other ruse, then physically assaulting and torturing them before taking their lives, usually by strangulation. Gacy was arrested in 1979, and the following year he was convicted of 33 slaughters. Gacy was executed in 1994. Gacy committed his first known slaying in January 1972, after luring the 16-year-old Timothy McCoy to his house for physical intimacy. The next morning, Gacy saw McCoy standing in the bedroom doorway with a knife and rushed to attack him, wresting the knife away and knifing McCoy to his demise. Afterward, Gacy belatedly realized that McCoy hadn't been attacking or threatening Gacy, but rather was holding the knife because he had just made them breakfast. Nevertheless, Gacy discovered he received physical gratification from slaying McCoy, and later said, "That's when I realized that end was the ultimate thrill." Another of Gacy's victims was John Butkovich, an 18-year-old PDM employee whom Gacy lured to his house with a promise to discuss overdue pay. Once there, Gacy gave him alcohol, tricked him into putting handcuffs on, and then strangled him. The use of handcuffs became a frequent method for Gacy, who would sometimes tell his victims he was showing them a magic trick. Butkovich's parents were suspicious of Gacy and called the police more than 100 times, urging them to investigate him further. By the middle of the 1970s, 2 more young men accused Gacy of physical hurt, and he was questioned by police about the disappearances of others. Gacy referred to this period of his life as his cruising years, when he committed most of his slayings. Most of his victims were buried on the property, with several placed in a common grave underneath his crawl space. One of his victims, a 17-year-old PDM employee named Gregory Godzik, told his family that Gacy had earlier ordered him to dig trenches in the crawl space at his home. Gacy later told police he arranged this work to create spaces for graves, according to John Wayne Gacy defending a monster.
Here's one of dozens of examples of what he calls proof.
And under sodium amytal, the maximum amount that I could have, I've taken 3.5 hours of truth serum. It shows that I have no knowledge of the crime whatsoever. Never have had.
After Godzik went missing, his family contacted Gacy, who told them that Godzik had confided to Gacy that he planned to run away from home. Gacy took lives of several more victims during this time period. One he left alive was Robert Donnelly, a 19-year-old college student he abducted from a Chicago bus stop. After bringing him to his house, Gacy raped and tortured Donnelly, dunking his head repeatedly in a bathtub until he passed out, and performing fake executions with a gun loaded with banks. Donnelly was in so much pain, he begged Gacy to take his life, but Gacy let him go and warned him not to tell anybody. Donnelly reported him to the police, however. When officers investigated, Gacy said it was a consensual physical slavery encounter, and the police believed him. Gacy slayed another victim 1 month later. By 1978, Gacy's crawl space had no more space for bodies, according to Killer Clown, and he started to dispose of his victims in the Des Plaines River from a bridge off Interstate 55. On December 11, 1978, a 15-year-old Robert Piest went missing after telling his mother he was going to meet Gacy to discuss a potential construction job. Piest's family filed a missing person report with the police, which led to a search of Gacy's house in Norwood Park. Authorities discovered several suspicious items there, including police badges, a pistol, hypodermic needles, pornographic films, and items that they later learned belonged to some of Gacy's victims. After a lengthy period of police surveillance and investigation, police discovered a receipt in Gacy's house that had belonged to Piest, contradicting Gacy's claim that he had no contact with Piest the day he went missing, according to John Wayne Gacy defending a monster. This resulted in further searches of Gacy's house, eventually leading to the discovery of several trenches filled with human remains in the crawl space beneath his house. Gacy eventually confessed to slaying about 30 people. On March 12, 1980, after a short jury deliberation, Gacy was found guilty of committing 33 slaughters, and he became known as one of the most ruthless serial slayers in American history. After the U.S. Supreme Court refused to hear Gacy's final appeal in October 1993, an execution date was set for May 10, 1994, at the Stateville Correctional Center in Crest Hill, Illinois. Before his demise, Gacy said the victims' families would get no comfort from his demise and accused the state of slaughtering him. His last words were reportedly, "Kiss my ass," but the prosecutor who tried the case and attended his execution said Gacy didn't speak in his final moments. Gacy was executed by lethal injection. In the years since Gacy's arrest, there have been lingering concerns that Gacy might have been responsible for taking the lives of other people whose bodies have yet to be found. And when police uncovered human remains in Gacy's house in 1978, 8 bodies couldn't be identified. In July 2017, Cook County authorities used DNA evidence to identify one of these unidentified victims as 16-year-old James Jimmy Byron Hawkinson, who had been reported missing since 1976. In October 2021, DNA testing identified another of Gacy's victims as 21-year-old Francis Wayne Alexander, who also disappeared in 1976. Billy Wayne Coble's slaying conviction in 1990. In 1990, the quiet town of Axtell, Texas, became the unsettling backdrop for a gruesome and horrifying crime that would haunt the collective memory of the community and captivate the nation. Billy Wayne Coble, a name forever etched in infamy, was convicted in that year for the brutal slayings of 3 members of his estranged wife's family, Robert Vischa, Zelda Vischa, and their son Bobby, a police sergeant. The nature of these slayings was nothing short of chilling. It wasn't a random act of violence, but a calculated and heinous act on his own family. The brutality of the crime sent shockwaves through Axtell, a place where such violence was unimaginable.
Coble refused to enter the courtroom for his sentencing hearing this morning.
While we grieve the amazing lives that were lost too soon, we find joy in the blessings and love we have in our family.
The mere thought of a peaceful family home turning into a scene of horror was enough to send shivers down anyone's spine. What made this case even more nightmarish was the subsequent kidnapping of Coble's estranged wife, Karen Vischa. Coble didn't stop at taking lives. He took Karen hostage, intensifying the horror. This macabre series of events, combining a triple slaying with the abduction of a family member, made it impossible for the media to look away. The entire nation watched in morbid fascination as the story unfolded. Coble's motivations, if one can even begin to fathom them, remained enigmatic. What drives a person to commit such unspeakable acts against their own flesh and blood? The trial that followed was a stark and chilling reminder of the darkest corners of the human psyche, revealing the potential for unspeakable violence that can lurk behind a seemingly ordinary facade. The legal proceedings were a somber affair as the Vischa family struggled to come to terms with the unimaginable grief and loss they had suffered. For them, it was a never-ending nightmare, a constant reminder of the violence that had shattered their lives. Billy Wayne Koble's conviction in 1990 was a stark wake-up call, a harrowing reminder of the depths to which human nature can descend. It left a community scarred and a family forever haunted by the brutality of that fateful day.
To his family, his son Gordon lost control once his father closed his eyes for the last time.
Judge Matt Johnson set his execution date for February 28th.
The pursuit of justice continued for years, culminating in Koble's putting down in 2019. It marked the end of a long and painful journey, yet left an indelible mark on the annals of true crime history. The echoes of that day will forever resonate in the memories of those who bore witness to its horrors. The ambush and slayings in Axtell, Texas. In August 1989, the peaceful town of Axtell, Texas was shaken to its core as Billy Wayne Koble embarked on a chilling rampage that would forever haunt the community. The sequence of events that unfolded on that fateful day is etched in infamy, as Koble meticulously planned and carried out a series of ambushes that left 3 innocent lives brutally extinguished. It all began in the quiet Vischa family home, where Koble launched his heartless attack. Robert Vischa went about his day in the kitchen. He had no inkling of the darkness that was about to descend upon him. Koble, armed with lethal intent, launched his attack, taking Robert's life in a horrifying act of violence. The kitchen, a place of warmth and sustenance, became a scene of unspeakable horror. But Koble's reign of terror did not end there. He swiftly moved to the home of Bobby Vischa, a police sergeant who was likely taken completely by surprise in his own garage. It was there, in a place meant for the mundane routines of daily life, that Koble launched his second ambush. The garage, once a space for cars and tools, became the site of a cold-blooded slaying that defied comprehension. The darkness that Koble brought to that day extended even further. As night fell, Zelda Vischa, the matriarch of the family, returned home, only to be met by a violent end. Her arrival turned the family home, a sanctuary of love and memories, into a crime scene, forever tainted by the horrors that unfolded within its walls. The sheer audacity of these ambushes, the calculated nature of the violence, and the utter lack of mercy left the Axtell community reeling. The Vischa family, once united by love, was irrevocably torn apart, their lives forever marked by the brutality of that day.
Death row for almost 3 decades for killing his estranged wife's parents and her brother back in the 1980s. Executed Billy Wayne Koble by lethal injection, but not before some of his own family members were thrown out and arrested.
The August day in 1989 was a day that Axtell would never forget, a stark reminder of the depths to which human darkness can descend. Billy Wayne Koble's ambush and the slayings in Axtell, Texas, served as a harrowing reminder of the fragility of human existence and the capacity for evil that can lurk in the most unexpected of places. Kidnapping and police chase. Imagine the chaos and terror that unfurled in the aftermath of those gruesome slayings in Axtell, Texas. Billy Wayne Koble, having already taken 3 innocent lives, wasn't content with just that. No, he plunged deeper into the abyss of darkness as he kidnapped his estranged wife, Karen Vischa, setting off a high-speed police chase that would have your heart pounding and your nerves on edge. With the ghastly crime scene still fresh, Koble abducted Karen, making an already horrific day even more nightmarish. Can you even begin to fathom the fear that gripped her, knowing she was in the clutches of the man who had just taken her family from her? It's the stuff of our worst nightmares, a real-life horror movie. It's a chilling reminder that evil exists in this world, and it's up to the heroes in uniform to stand against it. Billy Wayne Koble's demise sentence. Now let's delve into the lengthy and convoluted journey of Billy Wayne Koble's demise sentence. Brace yourself, because this story is far from ordinary. It's a chilling saga of the legal system, filled with twists and turns. Back in 1990, a grave decision was made in the courtroom, one that would forever alter Koble's destiny. The court didn't hold back. They sentenced him to demise, an unforgiving punishment with no room for second chances. It was a stark reminder that justice, in its most severe form, was about to be administered. But this is where things took a seriously twisted turn. Instead of a swift resolution, Koble's life became a never-ending legal roller coaster. For nearly 3 decades, he called Texas's Demise Row his home. It was a place where time crawled by and hope was a rare and fleeting visitor. As he languished in that cold, isolated cell, the legal system engaged in a complex dance with his fate. Appeals, challenges, debates, they all dragged on for years. The courtroom turned into a battleground where lawyers fought tirelessly to either uphold or overturn that fateful demise sentence.
Their pasts are varied, but at one time or another, they all have a common thought about their future: death by electrocution.
The former electrician was convicted of capital murder back in 1990 for the shooting deaths of his in-laws and their son.
Legal proceedings aren't known for their swiftness, and in Kobel's case, they moved at an agonizingly slow pace. He watched as his life hung in the balance, a pendulum swinging back and forth with each court ruling. It was a nerve-wracking waiting game, both for him and for those watching from the sidelines. But as time trudged on, the legal system finally reached its grim conclusion. After nearly 30 years of legal wrangling, Kobel's fate was sealed. The demise sentence, which had loomed over him since 1990, was finally carried out, and Kobel met his end in the putting down chamber. Billy Wayne Kobel's case is a sober chapter in the book of justice. It forces us to question the true nature of justice and the role of the legal system in delivering it. This story leaves you with a lingering sense of unease, making you wonder if justice was genuinely served or if the system failed all those involved. Kobel's lack of remorse and infamous last words. Now let's delve deeper into the unsettling world of Billy Wayne Kobel, a man known for his chilling lack of remorse and his infamous last words that continue to baffle. His demeanor, both before and during his putting down, painted a stark portrait of a man untouched by guilt. From the very beginning, it was clear that Kobel had no intention of offering any form of remorse for the gruesome slayings he had committed. His unapologetic attitude was as cold as the crimes themselves. He faced his impending putting down with a stoic and unyielding demeanor, seemingly untouched by the gravity of his actions. As he approached his final moments, Kobel's last words left witnesses in a state of bewilderment. He didn't simply utter the words $5. His cryptic farewell was a puzzle with multiple pieces. In the midst of it all, he declared his love and called out names. His messages were like fragments of a dark enigma, and their meaning was far from obvious. To understand the mysterious reference to $5, one must delve into Kobel's past. It harkened back to his experiences during the Vietnam War, a time that haunted him and left a profound impact. The mention of $5 was a glimpse into the torment and horrors he had witnessed during his service. It was a cryptic message that, for those who knew his history, hinted at the demons that had plagued him.
The McLennan County Sheriff's Office will now issue a death warrant as Kobel awaits execution in Huntsville.
Gordon Kobel kind of approached the glass, put his hands on the bars of the glass, and then eventually ended up hitting the glass.
Several members of the victim's family were in court today, and as the execution date came down, there were hugs and tears.
In the putting down chamber, Kobel's final words were a chilling concoction of love, cryptic references, and the calling of names. It was as if he wanted to leave behind a riddle, a puzzle that might never be completely unraveled. His lack of remorse and these perplexing last words added another layer of intrigue to an already chilling tale. Billy Wayne Kobel's story remains a haunting and enigmatic one. It serves as a stark reminder of the complexity of the human psyche and the darkness that can reside within. His unapologetic attitude and cryptic farewell continue to leave us with questions, inviting us to contemplate the mysteries that shroud his legacy. The lack of remorse and the cryptic final words of Billy Wayne Kobel paint a disturbing picture of a man who seemed immune to the weight of his heinous crimes. In the face of his impending putting down, he showed no signs of repentance or empathy for the lives he had taken. Kobel's last words before his putting down were a perplexing mixture of emotions and references. While the phrase $5 stood out, it was just one piece of the puzzle. He also expressed love and called out names, leaving those present and observers bewildered. To decipher the meaning behind $5, one must delve into Kobel's past as a Vietnam War veteran. This reference was a haunting glimpse into the traumatic experiences he had endured during his service. It hinted at the deep scars and torment that had haunted him for years. Legal challenges and overturning of demise sentence. Let's dive into the wild legal journey of Billy Wayne Coble. In 2007, the 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals dropped illegal explosive news that sent shockwaves through his case. They ordered a whole new trial on his punishment, and it wasn't just a simple paperwork shuffle, it was like flipping the whole game board upside down. Why, you ask? Well, they had some major beef with the questions that were thrown at the jury during Coble's original trial. They said those questions didn't cut it, especially when it came to Coble.
The execution date for a Central Texas man who killed 3 members of his estranged wife's family 29 years ago was finally read in court today.
Rowe for almost 3 decades for killing his estranged wife's parents and her brother back in the 1980s.
And again, they just expressed their disappointment with the justice system, saying that it shouldn't have taken this long.
It's like saying the rules of the game were rigged from the start. What does that mean in plain English? It means the whole sentencing phase was a mess, and they decided to hit the reset button. So, Coble, who was staring down the demise penalty, got a second shot at justice. Can you imagine the shockwave that sent through his life and everyone involved? Put yourself in Coble's boots for a minute. One moment you're living under the shadow of a demise sentence, and the next, someone says, "Hold on a sec, we need to rethink this whole thing." That's a whirlwind of emotions and a crazy legal roller coaster, to say the least. These legal battles aren't just some boring courtroom drama. They're a prime example of how the justice system can be a real maze. It's a long, winding road where justice doesn't always come easy. Sometimes it takes years to figure out what's right and fair, especially when it's a life or demise situation. Now, you might be thinking, why did it take so long for them to figure this out? Well, the legal system is like an intricate puzzle, and sometimes a few pieces are missing. The courts need to make sure they've got all the pieces in place before they make a decision that serious. So, here's the deal. Coble's legal saga is a stark reminder that the justice system, even in the most serious cases, can be like navigating a never-ending labyrinth. But it's all about making sure justice is done right, no matter how many twists and turns it takes. In the end, justice should be the North Star guiding the legal system, and while it might sometimes take a wild ride to get there, it's all in the name of getting things right. Coble's story is just one chapter in that bigger book of justice, and it shows that even in the toughest cases, the legal system keeps trying until it gets it right. Final putting down of Billy Wayne Coble. Billy Wayne Coble's journey through the legal system came to a dramatic and definitive end with his putting down by lethal injection in the state demise chamber in Huntsville, Texas, in February 2019. This moment marked the culmination of a prolonged legal process that had spanned decades, making it a profoundly significant event in the annals of the Texas criminal justice system. Coble's case had been anything but straightforward. For nearly 30 years, he had navigated the intricate and often convoluted pathways of the legal system. His story began in August 1989, when he committed a series of heinous crimes that sent shockwaves through the tight-knit community of Axtell, Texas. In August 1989, Coble ambushed and slayed his estranged wife's family members. He shot Robert Vischa in the kitchen, then went to Bobby Vischa's home, where he ambushed him in the garage.
The longer you live, the easier it is to accept death. Who is not going to leave this world?
Execution date has been set for a man convicted of a triple murder.
Billy Wayne Coble.
A person said one time, he said, "That's a horrible way of dying." I said, "What is a good way?"
Zelda Vischa met the same tragic fate when she arrived home later that evening. These brutal slaying left an indelible scar on the community, and justice for the victims' families became paramount. The legal saga that followed was as intricate as it was protracted. Coble was arrested, tried, and convicted in 1990, receiving a demise sentence for his crimes. However, this was just the beginning of a series of legal battles that would come to define his case. In 2007, the 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals ordered a new trial on punishment for Coble, citing issues with the special questions posed to the jury during his initial trial. The court ruled that these questions were unconstitutional as applied to him. This decision was a seismic shift in the legal landscape of Coble's case. It wasn't a minor adjustment, but a complete reevaluation of the sentencing phase of the trial. This significant legal maneuver represented the complexity and tenacity of the justice system. The questions posed to the jury were not just minor technicalities, they were fundamental to the determination of Coble's fate. This decision meant that the entire sentencing process had to be revisited, reevaluated, and redone.
I feel bad about killing the first person I killed in Vietnam. I see them just as vividly, just as clear.
Faces execution for killing his estranged wife's parents and her brother, who was a Waco police officer.
As I did the day that it happened, but I can never go back and change that.
For Billy Wayne Coble, this meant another shot at justice. It was like a surreal twist in a legal drama that had been playing out for almost 2 decades. The prospect of a new trial brought a wave of emotions, not just for Coble, but for everyone involved. It was a stark reminder that the pursuit of justice could be a long and winding journey with unexpected turns. Coble's final putting down was not just the end of a legal battle, it was the closing of a chapter in the lives of the victims' families. For them, it was a moment of bittersweet closure, a culmination of a long and painful journey towards justice. The legal system had spoken, and the punishment for Coble's crimes had been carried out. Billy Wayne Coble's case had showcased the legal system's ability to revisit, reevaluate, and ultimately reach a final decision, even in the most complex and protracted legal battles. It underscores the fundamental principles of justice and accountability, reminding us that the legal system is designed to uphold these principles no matter the challenges it encounters. In the end, justice was served, and the final verdict was delivered. Interview with Susanna Reid. In a chilling interview with Susanna Reid, conducted just days before his putting down, Billy Wayne Coble showcased an unsettling and unapologetic demeanor regarding the horrific crimes he had committed and his impending demise sentence. It was a moment that left a lasting impression on both Reid and the public, revealing Coble's unrepentant attitude in the face of his heinous acts. The August 1989 shooting in Axtell, Texas, had sent shockwaves through the community and shattered the lives of the Vischa family. The brutal slayings of Robert and Zelda Vischa and their son Bobby Vischa, along with the subsequent kidnapping of Coble's estranged wife Karen Vischa, had gripped the nation's attention. Cobb's interview with Susanna Reid was a rare opportunity to delve into the mind of a man who had committed such gruesome acts. It was an interview that drew attention due to the stark contrast between the enormity of his crimes and his seemingly relaxed and unapologetic demeanor. Coble's attitude was perhaps best captured by his response when asked about his thoughts on the gruesome slayings. "To some people it matters," he replied. "To me, it really no longer matters." This chilling response underscored his lack of remorse for the lives he had taken and the pain he had caused to countless others.
On the reason that you've spent almost 30 years here on death row, it was for an act of extreme violence.
They didn't want to speak on camera, but they were skeptical about if this execution is actually going to happen.
Do you regret what you did that day? Do you understand and feel the horror?
When pressed further on the slayings of his wife's parents and brother, Coble stopped short of offering an apology, stating, "Okay, if you want me to give some type of rehearsed apology or something, I mean, I've already said that I regret what happened. Now I fully regret what happened. But I also truly regret a lot of things in life." This interview gave an eerie glimpse into the mind of a man who had committed unforgivable acts. His lack of remorse and his seemingly nonchalant attitude about the impending demise penalty left many listeners deeply unsettled. It was a stark reminder that some individuals are capable of heinous acts and may never express genuine remorse or empathy for their victims. Coble's unapologetic stance, even in the face of imminent putting down, left a chilling impact. It served as a stark reminder of the depths of human darkness and the complexity of the criminal mind. It was a moment that Susanna Reid and the audience would not soon forget, as they came face to face with a man who had committed the most horrendous of crimes and remained unrepentant until the end. Coble's unapologetic attitude. In the interview with Susanna Reid, Billy Wayne Coble's unapologetic attitude was on full display, and it sent a chilling message about his state of mind. When the subject of the gruesome slayings came up, Coble's response was far from what one might expect in such a situation. He callously remarked that the slayings no longer mattered to him, a statement that left a profound impact on those listening. His words were a stark contrast to what many would consider the natural human response in the face of the pain and suffering he had inflicted upon the Vischa family. It was a cold and unfeeling statement that reflected his lack of remorse and his seemingly callous detachment from the gravity of his actions. Furthermore, when probed further about the slayings and the possibility of offering an apology, Coble fell short of expressing genuine contrition. His response was as unsettling as it was unapologetic. He said, "Okay, if you want me to give some type of rehearsed apology or something, I mean, I've already said that I regret what happened. Now I fully regret what happened, but I also truly regret a lot of things in life."
I accepted I did the murders, yes. I accepted that I'm here for those murders, yes.
But Bill, you accept that you're guilty of those murders, don't you?
It matters. To some people, it matters. To me, it really no longer matters.
This response was a far cry from a heartfelt apology, as it seemed to lack sincerity and genuine remorse for the heinous crimes he had committed. Coble's demeanor during the interview reinforced the notion that some individuals may never come to terms with or express remorse for the pain and suffering they have caused. Victims' family and impact on them. The impact of Billy Wayne Coble's crimes extended far beyond the immediate victims and reached deeply into the lives of the Vischa family. For years, they endured a painful and arduous journey through the legal system, seeking justice for the heinous slayings of their beloved family members. The August 1989 shootings in Axtell, Texas, forever altered the course of the Vischa family's lives. The brutal slayings of Robert and Zelda Vischa and their son, Bobby Vischa, were a devastating blow that left an indelible scar on the family. The trauma of losing their loved ones in such a horrific manner was compounded by the subsequent kidnapping of Karen Vischa, a terrifying ordeal that would haunt her for years to come. The legal proceedings that followed were protracted and filled with delays, further exacerbating the pain and suffering endured by the Vischa family. Billy Wayne Coble's numerous appeals and challenges only prolonged their agony, preventing them from finding the closure they so desperately sought. However, the putting down of Coble in February 2019 marked the culmination of this lengthy and painful chapter in the Vischa family's lives. For them, it was a moment of relief and closure, a step toward healing the deep wounds left by the traumatic events of that fateful August night. The knowledge that the man responsible for their unimaginable suffering was no longer a threat offered a sense of solace and justice, albeit long overdue.
I'm not talking about other things. I'm talking about the murder of Bobby and his parents.
I feel bad about what I did and what the world's done. I feel bad about a lot of things.
Several members of the victim's family were in court today, and as the execution date came down, there were hugs and tears.
That's all for this video, folks. We'll see you next time.